بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We start today our first video in the snippets of the Seerah, which is the biography of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. Now before we get into the life of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, I wanted to mention and start with a very interesting story that happened to the grandfather of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. And this happened before the revelation, before the Prophet ﷺ was even born. Now, as you know, the Kaaba existed before Islam, before the revelation. Abraham ﷺ and his son ﷺ, they built the Kaaba, and it was there in Quraysh, and it was a sacred structure that everybody used to do pilgrimage to, even the non-Arabs. People used to travel from Africa just to do their pilgrimage there. Now, there was a king called Abraha, and he was located in Sana'a, Yemen. He didn't like that. He didn't like that everybody used to go to the Arabs and do their pilgrimage there. So he wanted to compete. He built the biggest church ever heard of. Yeah? And he spread the word. He sent to everyone saying, I've built the greatest temple, and you don't need to go to the Arabs. You can come and do your pilgrimage here in Sana'a. Now the Arabs, the word got out and the Arabs heard about this. One of the Arabs, he was furious, he was really angry. And see how when you don't control your emotions, you can do very, very stupid things. So this man traveled all the way from Quraysh. He traveled all the way to Sana'a to go to that temple, okay, where Abraha was. And he went there and it was quiet. He snuck inside and he defecated in the temple and he left. And of course, people investigated who came in, what happened, did you see a stranger? People knew that they saw this man coming in and they identified him as an Arab, and they knew that he was from Quraysh. So Abraha was furious and he swore that he's going to Mecca as a retaliation. He's going to Mecca to destroy the Kaaba. Then Abraha sent out a messenger and he told the Arabs in Quraysh, he told them, I'm not here to fight you, I'm not here to harm you, I just want to come and destroy your sacred structure, Al-Kaaba, and I'll be going back to Yemen. He prepared his army. There were around 60,000 soldiers, and he prepared elephants. And of course, back then, the Arabs didn't know the elephants. And the Arabs heard about that. He heard that Abraha has prepared an army and he is coming for them. Now, of course, these people weren't Muslim. They were on a polytheistic belief, but the Kaaba was something sacred to them. And they couldn't stand there and let Abraha destroy their sacred structure. One of the Arabs decided that he wanted to do something about this. So he gathered his men. He was called the Nafar. And he went to face Abraha and his army. Of course, he wanted to face them midway before he even reached. And of course, Abraha, they couldn't stand a chance against Abraha. So he defeated them and he took hostage some of the people there. Then he reached to At-Ta'if. He reached there and the people came outside and they said, Oh Abraha, we are your servants and we are obedient to you. And we don't think that you want us. You are targeting Mecca. This is not Mecca. And of course, they had idols there. So they were scared for their idols to be destroyed. You don't want these idols. You need to go to Mecca. Mecca's on this direction. We will send with you a man to direct you there and he will guide you. He'll be your guidance to Mecca. Now this guide was called Abu Rughal. Abu Rughal, halfway to Kaaba, he passed away. He died. And they buried him there. Now, of course, the Arabs heard about his grave, that it was located there, and they used to throw stones at him, as a token of anger because he betrayed the Arabs. He led Abraha to Mecca. Abraha, before he reached to Mecca, he sent out a group led by a person called Al-Aswad. And that guy, when he went there, he collected money and he collected a lot of things, and among the things he took from Mecca was 200 camels, and these camels were the ownership of Abdul Muttalib. And Abdul Muttalib, of course, was the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Arabs knew they couldn't stand a chance in front of Abraha, against Abraha and his army. And he said, ask who is their Sayyid, who is their honored one, like a chief or a decision maker in Quraysh. Tell him that, and tell him if he wants, he can come and discuss the matter with me, with Abraha. So Quraysh discussed the matter. He said, okay, who can go there and negotiate with Abraha, see what we can do. Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ, they decided that he should go and speak with Abraha. Now when he reached to Abraha, he's sitting in his throne, he's a king. Abraha said, if I go, if I let him into close to me in my throne and he sits with me, that's kind of degrading to me. I'm a king. And if I leave him there, that's also maybe disrespectful for the guy. So he decided to come and sit on the floor with Abdul Muttalib so he can discuss the matter. So the first thing Abraha said to Abdul Muttalib, he told him, what do you want? ماذا تريد? So Abdul Muttalib told him, you guys took 200 of my camels, I want them back. Abraha was shocked. He was like, I thought you were greater than this. You came here asking me about your camels and you're not worried about me destroying the Kaaba? Don't you want to ask me about that? Then Abdul Muttalib said something great, something very sensitive, and it became like a quote, a proverb that people mention. Abdul Muttalib قال أنا رب الإبل وللبيت رب يحميه. I am the guardian of these camels, and the house, which means that the Kaaba, the house has its guardian and he will protect it. Then Abraha said, he won't stop me from destroying the Kaaba. Then Abdul Muttalib said, أنت وذاك, just go ahead then, I can't stop you. So Abraha told his men they can return his 200 camels, and Abdul Muttalib went back to Quraysh. Abu Talib went to his people in Quraysh and he told them, you don't have a chance against Abraha, so let's just move out, go to the mountains and wait for him to finish what he came for, and then we'll come back and move on with our lives. Of course, he gathered some men and he started praying to Allah. He started praying to Allah that he protects this house and he protects it from Abraha. Then they all, after praying, they all left to the mountains, waiting for Abraha to come in and do what he came for to do. At that time when Abraha came, he reached Mecca, and they were preparing the elephants to go and attack the Kaaba. They were of course just outside the outskirts of Mecca. And when they directed the elephants to go towards the Kaaba, the elephants would just sit down and wouldn't move. And that was just weird. So they moved them, they hit them, and they wouldn't budge. If they moved the elephants, they tried moving the elephants to another direction, they'd move. Like they moved them to the east, they would move. They'd move up to the west, they'd move. But towards the Kaaba, they'd sit down. And that was very weird for them. So they were clueless. And suddenly, a big flock of birds came attacking Abraha and his army. Of course, as the surah mentions, they were holding 2 stones and one in their beak, throwing these stones at Abraha, the elephants and his army. Great wind came and drove them away. Many of them died, some of them survived, and the Arabs were on top of the mountains looking, witnessing what happened, what kind of miracle happened to save the Kaaba from Abraha and his army. And know that Allah Azza wa Jal has protected the Kaaba from Abraha, not because of the Arabs. No, he protected the Kaaba because this Kaaba, this structure, was a sacred Kaaba. And perhaps, maybe, they were monotheistic in their dua. They had tawheed in their heart when they did the dua, and Allah has answered their prayer. Wallahu a'lam. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illallah astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.